Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news coming out of the transfer portal for the Oregon Duck fans as former Michigan State defensive lineman Derrick Harmon committing to the Oregon Ducks. And I mean, many of you guys know this Oregon team heading into 2024, one of my favorite teams in terms of how dangerous they can be. We've talked about that missing puzzle piece, and we've kind of said it's on the inside of that defensive line. You add Derrick Harmon into this defensive line, and you're looking at this Oregon team pretty much checking every single box you want to see heading into the fall. Want to dive into Derrick Harmon, talk a little bit about what he brings to this Oregon Ducks defense, and then take a little bit of a sneak peek and talk about what this Oregon Ducks defensive line will look like in 2024. Before we get into it, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been truly a blast covering the transfer portal over the last couple of weeks. The amount of support y'all have continued to show to the fellas truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with what makes Derrick Harmon so special, a guy that we've talked extensively about over the last couple of weeks, and he kind of satisfies everything you want on the inside of that defensive line. Going into the Big Ten, sometimes you need those bodies that just do the ugly work on the inside, right? Taking on double teams, letting your linebackers play free, and I think what makes Derrick Harmon so special is he can certainly do that, right? At 6'5", 320, very good at the point of attack, plays with low pads, has violent hands. But I think more importantly, Derrick Harmon can be that difference maker as well. And that's rare. When you talk about college football interior defensive linemen, you have the guys that can eat up double teams, sit in the two gap, and kind of play that role. Do you have the difference makers? Do you have the guys that can create negative plays, give you that pass rush juice on the inside? Derrick Harmon can also do that. And you talk about what we wanted to see from the Oregon Ducks heading into 2024. We wanted to see some more difference makers on the defensive line. What does Dan Lanning turn around to do? He's getting it going on the recruiting trail. We've talked extensively about the defensive linemen they have coming in, but in the transfer portal, going out and bringing in Jamari Caldwell, Derrick Harmon, two of the more coveted interior defensive linemen that you saw available in the portal. You look at this Oregon Ducks team and say they lost 2 games to the Washington Huskies. They were one of the best teams in college football, but when those 2 games happened against the Huskies, you kind of saw, hey, we need a little bit more difference makers on the inside. You look at Michigan, why they had success against Washington. They could kind of overwhelm Washington a little bit along the line of scrimmage. You look at Oregon heading into 2024, they appear to be that team that can also overwhelm teams, win at the point of attack. And I think Derrick Harmon really satisfies that last missing piece for this Oregon Ducks defensive line. And you take a look at what this unit is going to look like in 2024. I mean, Jamari Caldwell, Derrick Harmon, I think represent one of the more dominant duos you see on the inside of that defensive line. That is going to be, in my mind, night and day from what you saw in 2023. And I'm not knocking guys like Casey Rogers from the Oregon Ducks last year, but I mean, Jamari Caldwell, Derrick Harmon, those are NFL caliber guys that you now have on the inside. But I think more importantly, you start looking at the depth of this Oregon Ducks defensive line. A lot of guys showing out during the spring game on Saturday. With Ben Roberts transferring out, you still have a ton of depth on this defensive line. Amari Washington, Ware Hudson. You talk about some young guys like Tyon Gray, Jericho Johnson. I look at this Oregon Ducks defense specifically on the inside of that defensive line and say, you got some really good top-end talent with Jamari Caldwell, Derrick Harmon. Those are NFL dudes, guys that could be top 100 picks 12 months from now, but you also have that depth. And you talk about what separates teams come November and December, and you make no mistake about it. That's when Oregon wants to win their football games. This is a team that wants to win a Big Ten championship, expects to win a Big Ten championship. You got to be deep in the months of November and December. I say this all the time. You look at some of the teams that have won national championships, Georgia, the Michigan Wolverines. Yes, they've had the star power like the Oregon Ducks have. They also had that depth. And a guy like Amari Washington, massive fan of going into year 2, probably starts on a lot of Power 5 football teams across the country. Now is just going to be a rotational piece in this Oregon Ducks defense. We've talked about it. I think this Oregon team checks about every single box that you want to see heading into 2024. I think they have a great offensive line. I think Dylan Gabriel fits exactly what they want to do on offense. elite pass catchers on the outside. Then you look at the defense and say, hey, we like the secondary. We want to see some more game records on the inside. Dan Lanning goes out and does exactly that, bringing in a guy like Derrick Harmon. Massive commitment for the Oregon Ducks. I truly think this is one of those difference makers that you add in the transfer portal. And I don't say that for a lot of these guys, where a lot of guys might add to some depth, might help this team out. You look at Derrick Harmon, I think could be one of those players that puts this Oregon Ducks team over the edge heading into 2024. Y'all can tell this one fires me up. We'll cut it there. Again, appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.